Facial recognition technology is a powerful tool when used properly. But when used improperly or relied upon too heavily, it raises some very serious concerns and has some very real-world negative consequences. Today we'll hear from a witness who was detained after the Detroit Police Department relied on facial recognition technology that pointed the finger wrongly at this man. Facial recognition technology is not perfect, and actually, quite honestly, it's far from it. In order to be reliable, images must be captured in the most favorable conditions, with lighting, angle, aging, and other factors, ultimately reducing reliability.
Worse yet, facial recognition algorithms perform poorly when tasked with analyzing the faces of women, people of color, elderly, and children. I'm also concerned about the potential First and Fourth Amendment erosions that facial recognition technology can cause.
Law enforcement agencies could potentially use the systems for the surveillance of individuals not involved in any suspicious activity whatsoever. Moreover,
federal law enforcement agencies, with assistance from their state and local law enforcement partners, have access to images of an overwhelming number of otherwise law-abiding citizens.
State motor vehicle agencies possess high-quality photographs of most citizens that are a natural source for facial recognition programs.
It could easily be combined with public surveillance or other cameras in the construction of a comprehensive system of identification and tracking.
Federal law enforcement agencies are also not limited to facial recognition technology systems they control or those controlled by other law enforcement partners at the state and local level. Federal law enforcement can use non-government facial recognition service providers such as Vigilant Solutions or Clearview AI.
For example, law enforcement officers with a Clearview AI account can use a computer or smartphone to upload a photo of an unknown individual to Clearview AI's facial recognition system. The system then returns search results that show potential photos of the unknown individual,
as well as links to the site where the photos were obtained, such as
Facebook or Instagram.
The use of facial recognition technology is largely unregulated and raises numerous concerns. The government could use facial recognition technology to monitor or target people exercising their First Amendment rights, including freedom of association. Facial recognition technology also poses significant privacy concerns, and improper use could violate Fourth and First Amendment rights, protecting people from unreasonable searches and seizures and guaranteeing freedom of association. With these constitutional reliability concerns with this technology, the GAO just issued a report indicating that not only have the federal law enforcement agencies not assessed privacy and other risks associated with the use of this technology, some of them don't even know which systems their agents are using.
The Leadership Conference supports a ban or a moratorium on the use of these technologies. We support a ban or moratorium because, one, these communities are already, the communities where facial recognition technology is being used are already over-policed and over-surveilled. Two, facial recognition technology is disproportionately inaccurate for Black and Brown communities, and particularly communities of color. And three, the community has not been involved in these processes. The Congress is not engaged in legislation on these topics. Communities have not been involved in highlighting what they think policing should be, specifically within the context of facial recognition technology.
With current technology, what prevents federal agencies or state and local government from using facial recognition, not just to use it for identification, but to track movement and behavior of law-abiding citizens?
I fear that's what's coming down the pike. And, you know, right now there are specific transparency measures and, you know, lukewarm, I would say, strictures on some of these uses. Ms. Goodwin talked very well about the PIA and SORNs and GAO's recommendations. Those are great start points, but at this point, there are no hard constraints on the expansion of a remit for these cameras. So the public safety remit, you know, it's huge. It could encompass all sorts of things. And clearly, certain municipalities are taking advantage of that to interpret public safety as they wish. So unless federal entities are required to really submit those efficacy reports, those transparency reports that don't yet exist in a very rigorous fashion, then I fear many official entities will be allowed to interpret the use of facial recognition, interpret the use of digital surveillance in any way they can. And I will say quickly, you know, when I was at Facebook, the ethos of private companies and shipping these products, and this is the problem with private companies being used by federal entities, is you want to ship it. You want to ship it. You deploy these technologies as fast as you can and solve problems in the rollout in later iterations.
In theory, to think about a distinction in the use of the technology as an investigative tool versus forming the basis for an arrest, or put differently, a facial recognition match by itself forming probable cause, right, to arrest. But I think that from a regulatory standpoint, one needs to take great care in thinking about what strictures need to be put in place to create a meaningful distinction between those two things, right? So, for example, there are a number of agencies that currently say facial recognition itself cannot be the basis for probable cause. But then there are very few, if any, sort of strictures around what further investigation is required to build an independent case, right?
Are there, for example, blinding procedures so that individuals who are then doing a subsequent lineup don't know that facial recognition initially matched the individual? If not, right, that's not a particularly meaningful independent check.
And the last thing I'll say is that I think there's an important sort of intersection here between facial recognition technology and what we already know about the fallibility of eyewitness identification, right, which in
over 75% of known DNA exonerations, there were now known to be wrong
eyewitness identifications that occurred. So that's an investigative tool that itself is already quite fragile, right? And when used as a corroborating piece of evidence
with the fragile facial identification, that should give reason for concern.